Welcome to another Mr. Garcia lesson plan. Today we are learning about fascism. We're going to be reading a couple primary sources, Benito Mussolini's definition of fascism as well as Adolf Hitler's. Before we dive into the reading, I wanted to discuss a little bit of background here. Hopefully you have done your notes based off this presentation to help you with the final test. The post-World War I time frame, the 20 years in between World War I and World War II, were very fraught in Europe. There was a lot of struggle, especially in Germany and Italy, with poor economy, high unemployment. And when unemployment is high, oftentimes it is the young people who sit there idle and struggle to make a living. This can lead to discontent and uprisings and rebellions, which it did in both countries. Sometimes those rebellions can be bloodless, sometimes they can actually involve fighting, and there's a bit of fighting in both of these. Something I want you to know. In America, we throw around the term communist and fascist like they mean nothing at all. That can be farther from the truth. A fascist is a dictator, someone who rules on their own and is upheld. You might walk into someone's house in a fascist country and see the picture of the leader right next to a picture of like Jesus or something, whatever the main religious deity is of that country. So fascists are on one side of the political spectrum. They are reactionary, so they try and bring up images of the past, how we're going to go back to the good old days, we're going to take things back to when things were comfortable. They're speaking to typically older people in those cases because people are nostalgic for the good old days when things are bad. Versus a radical, a communist. Typically, they want to burn the system down, start fresh. We're not going to change it from within. We're going to throw it all out and start brand new. And obviously in communism, the state owns everything. There's no private property. And in a reactionary government, a fascist government, there is private property, but the government basically controls every aspect of your life. So I can see how there's a commonality between the two, but in reality they are farthest from each other in how they get things done. Going into World War II, you have Joseph Stalin of the Soviet Union, pictured on the right in this political cartoon, and you have Adolf Hitler on the left. They split up Poland in order to avoid fighting each other for the first year, basically, of World War II. So they are very strange bedfellows. They did not like each other one bit, but they knew that they did not want to get into a fight quite yet. Little fun background here. The term fascism is from a Roman axe, this one pictured right here. Typically in a classroom, and if you have a handful of pencils or sticks outside, you can try this yourself. But it's pretty easy to break one stick on its own. But if you've ever tried to break 10 or 15 sticks all at once, it becomes considerably more difficult. So that's what the term fascism is. A fasce is a bundle of sticks. So it's an ancient Roman axe where the blade is held together by a bunch of smaller sticks rather than like one big axe handle like what we're accustomed to today. So you can easily attempt this yourself. Go find a pencil or something that you won't miss because it'll be broken in a moment. And you'll see how easy it is to break. You grab 10 pencils and it becomes incredibly difficult. If you're incredibly strong, you might be able to break them, but oftentimes, you can just sort of see how difficult it would be for the sake of the exercise. So, fascist governments are reactionary. They are very conservative. They want to take things back to the way they were. We don't have fascists and communists in America today. Bernie Sanders self-identifies as a socialist Democrat, but he is nowhere near Joseph Stalin. And if you're a Democrat, you might think of Donald Trump or Mitch McConnell or some of the conservatives in the Republican Party as fascists, being very reactionary, but they are very far away from being an Adolf Hitler or a Mussolini or a Franco. We still have a lot of freedoms in this country. The political parties do work together in national emergencies, obviously. So today we're going to read a few different documents. This first document, document A, is an excerpt from the textbook that we have in the class. It's since been updated, but the wording is pretty similar. So I will read these for you. You'll be answering the questions. Fascism was a new militant political movement that emphasized loyalty to the state and obedience to the leader. Unlike communism, fascism has no clearly defined theories or program. Nevertheless, most fascists shared several ideas. They preached an extreme form of nationalism or loyalty to one's country. Fascists believed that nations must struggle. Peaceful states are doomed to be conquered. They pledged loyalty to an authoritarian leader, a dictator, who guided and brought order to the state. In each nation, fascists wore uniforms of certain color and used special salutes and held mass rallies. So we don't have full uniforms. We don't have special salutes in America. We put our hand over our heart for a civilian. We salute if you're in uniform and a soldier, or Boy Scout or Girl Scout or what have you. So let's go down to the questions here. How does the textbook identify fascism? Think about those different aspects of a fascist government. I'm not going to give you any of the answers. It's all right there. So what are the main ideas of fascism? What are they going to do? And based off the information presented in the textbook, how might fascism have contributed to the outbreak of World War II? Think about that extreme part, right? That's a very big hint. So, document B. Before reading the document, what do you know about the state of affairs in Italy following World War I? Were the Italians happy with their government and the Treaty of Versailles? Explain. I will tell you this. The Italians signed up to be a part of the Allies, the Intendant, in World War I, expecting to get a lot of territorial gains in the end. In the end, they only got a little bit. They did not get any reparations, per se. Not like the British and the French did. So they were not the happiest. So I've already talked about the state of affairs in Italy going in after World War I. Go reference the presentation if you would like more information. So, Benito Mussolini. He is from Italy. So Benito Mussolini founded the first fascist party shortly after World War I in Italy, promising a strong new Italian state modeled after the ancient Roman Empire. There's harking back to the good old days. The Romans ruled the known world at one point. Mussolini gained many followers among war veterans and the middle class. The following is an excerpt from the Doctrine of Fascism, which Mussolini wrote. Above all, fascism believes neither in the possibility nor the usefulness of peace. War alone brings out the best in people and puts the stamp, the mark of nobility upon the people who have the courage to face it. Fascism attacks democratic ideals. Fascism denies that the majority can rule human societies. It insists on the inequality of man is beneficial, helpful. Some men are greater than others. These men should rule. The fascist state organizes the nation. It takes away pointless or harmful freedoms, preserves those that are essential. It cannot be the individual who decides what freedoms matter, but only the state. In it, the tradition of ancient Rome, the fascist state seeks to create an empire. For fascism, the creation of an empire is the demonstration of strength and health. Its opposite, which is staying at home, is a sign of weakness and corruption. If every age has its own doctrine, it is clear from 1,000 signs that the doctrine of the current age is fascism. The Italian people will rise again after many centuries of abandonment and neglect, rejection. The Italian people will rise again to create a new Roman Empire, and once again the Italian people will lead the world. So, Benito Mussolini was the man who created the term fascism. So for number 2 on document B, who is Benito Mussolini and what is his relationship to fascism? Do you think he's a better source on the topic of fascism than the textbook? Explain your answer. So I need more than a yes or a no. Choose a lane. Number 3, after reading Mussolini's ideas, define fascism in your own words. How is this similar and different than the one given in the textbook? Closed reading. Why do you think Mussolini mentions the ancient Roman Empire in the last 2 paragraphs? How do you think Italians might react to these references? I will say that if you haven't been to Italy yet in your life, it's a good life goal. It's a beautiful place. But take Rome as an example, the capital city. You go to Rome, you cannot trip over ancient Roman artifacts. I have family friends that live in northern Italy, and in their little city, they decided to dig a hole to like build a sewer or something like that, and they just stumbled across ancient Roman artifacts after ancient Roman artifacts. They're just everywhere. And in Rome and Pompeii and places like that, you have entire Roman cities that are just still standing after 2,000 years. So it's kind of like us seeing a McDonald's, I would say. It's a pretty poor reference, but you can't not see the Golden Arches everywhere you go, seeing a Starbucks everywhere you go. So, number 5, thinking critically, which of Mussolini's fascist ideas do you find the most interesting and or troubling? How do you think these views might have contributed to the outbreak of World War II? So this is a personal opinion question, so you should have an opinion. What parts do you find interesting or troubling? So do any of you think that the idea of it would be simpler if we just had one person that made all the decisions for everyone? Do any of you find the idea of the state making decisions for you is troubling? So, document C. Before reading the document, what do you know about the state of affairs in Germany following the end of World War I? Were the Germans happy with their government and the Treaty of Versailles? Explain. Now this one should be very evident. If you need extra help, you can go back to the presentation. I talk about Germany has to accept blame for World War I. It has a limited military and has to pay $55 billion in reparations. Now think about how much money $55 billion is today in 2020. Then go back 100 years. $55 billion is an exorbitant amount of money for 1920. So do you think the Germans would be happy with having a smaller military, having to pay all that money? And if you don't remember from previous history classes, Germany decided to just print more money, which is a very bad idea, in order to pay those reparations. It led to hyperinflation where the value of the printed money became worthless. People were wallpapering their walls with it. They were burning it in their stoves. Kids were playing with stacks of cash as their toys. So do you think the Germans would be happy with the government who printed their money into being worthless? Do you think that they would be happy with the Treaty of Versailles making them pay back those reparations? Think about it. So, Adolf Hitler, Nazi leader of Germany. In 1925, he was sitting in prison when he wrote Mein Kampf, My Struggle. And so here's an excerpt. I will say this, fascists love to create a hatred of the other, and the other is in quotes. It could be anyone or anything. For many fascist states, they treated communists as the other. In other fascist states like Germany, that they had communists, the Roma. There was also obviously the Jewish people. So we're going to read a little bit about that right now. So background information: when Mussolini and his fascist party rose to power in Italy, Adolf Hitler was a little-known political leader in Germany. Inspired in part by Mussolini, Hitler helped form the German fascist movement in the mid-1920s. The following is an excerpt from Mein Kampf, My Struggle. In it, Hitler describes his own fascist worldview. Hitler was a fanboy of Mussolini, I will say that. The political parties that currently exist cannot be expected to bring about the radical change that Germany needs. A political party will compromise with political opponent. The fascist worldview never does this. The fascist worldview knows it's never wrong. The fascist worldview is intolerant, and this intolerance is virtuous, good and right. It will never share its place with the current order. It will wage a destructive battle to abolish, destroy the current order. It is not necessary for every individual fighter in this battle to understand the ideas and plans of the fascist worldview. The fascist worldview can exist only if leaders of great intellectual ability are served by a large mass of men who are passionately devoted to the cause. We must inspire discipline and blind faith, for the side with the best disciplined and most blindly obedient troops always triumphs. So to be blindly obedient is to be easily controlled, and you never question the authority. I want all of you to always question authority. If the government's doing something that you don't agree with, or makes you raise an eyebrow, makes you scratch your head and wonder what they're up to, regardless of your political leanings, regardless of your political party, question it. Ask what's going on. Dig deeper. In order to carry the ideas of the fascist worldview to victory, a populist party had to be founded. The National Socialist German Labour Party, the Nazi Party, is that party. The National Socialist German Labour Party will prepare the way for the destruction of the current order throughout the world. The forces currently in control of the world are Jews here, Jews there, and Jews everywhere. The hardship we are now experiencing is because of them. If this continues, the Jews will one day destroy the German nation and the world. We must wipe out the Jewish empire, which is now in control. So that's from Mein Kampf, My Struggle by Adolf Hitler, written in 1925. Let's see here. So, number 2, who is Adolf Hitler and what is his relationship to fascism? Do you think he's better source on the topic of fascism than the textbook, than Mussolini? Whenever it says explain, I'm looking for complete sentences from you. So interpret. After reading Hitler's ideas, look back at your previous definition of fascism. Is there anything you wish to add? Explain. What does Hitler accuse the Jewish people of in this last paragraph? Why do you think Hitler brings up the Jewish people in this way? How do you think Germans might react to this idea? Which of Hitler's fascist ideas do you find the most interesting and or troubling? How do you think these views might have contributed to the outbreak of World War II? Think about all that unbridled hatred of a single group of people, blaming all of your country's problems on that one group of people. So, I'm available on Teams. If you need any extra help, you can message me. I'm usually available into the evening. Hopefully this is a pretty straightforward assignment. Hopefully you get it done on time. Let me know if you have any other questions.